Welcome back. Fighting is escalating in eastern Ukraine, and Kiev accuses Russia of sending hundreds of troops over its border. And Matthew Chance is following the latest developments for us from Moscow. And Matthew, in recent days, there's really been an increase in attacks in eastern Ukraine. Talk us through the carnage.
Yeah, well, that carnage, as you say, hasn't really ended. I mean, it's been an almost daily occurrence for some months now that people have been killed by both sides in this conflict, the pro-Russian rebels and government forces in the fighting that's been raging in eastern Ukraine. But I think there's certainly a case to be made for the fact that in the past few days, fighting has reached a new, much higher level. Dozens of people have been killed or injured as fighting has escalated all along the various flashpoints. Various installations have been attacked. A hospital is reported to have been attacked in the center of Donetsk earlier today. But much of the fighting has focused around Donetsk airport. Now, this was a showpiece of eastern Ukraine. It was a relatively new terminal, is a relatively new terminal. It's strategically important because it provides, obviously, an airstrip to bring in supplies. But it's also become very symbolically important and symbolic of this battle that's raging between the Ukrainian government and the pro-Russian rebels. After months of heavy fighting for control of Donetsk airport, these dramatic images captured by an aerial drone paint a startling picture of the devastation. Just months ago, this was a modern, functioning terminal, a gleaming symbol of economic progress in eastern Ukraine. Now it's a symbol of ruin. Recent days have seen a sharp upswing in violence and bloodshed. Ukrainian government forces on the offensive, using heavy weapons, seizing territory controlled by pro-Russian rebels. It's raising concerns Moscow may intervene, as it's been accused of doing in the past.
The decision was taken for a mass operation, which was successful. We have almost completely cleansed the territory of the airport, which belongs to Ukrainian forces, as marked by military separation lines.
But civilians continue to be caught in the crossfire. Last week, at least 12 people were killed on this passenger bus, shelled as it stood at a government checkpoint southwest of Donetsk. Both sides blame each other for the tragedy, though it seems to have hardened attitudes in Kiev. At a peace march in the Ukrainian capital to mourn the victims, the country's president was defiant.
We will not give up any piece of Ukrainian land. We will return Donbass. We will restore the Ukrainian nation there. And we will show that one more highly important factor of our victory is our unity.
But Ukraine appears far from united and may instead be on the brink of yet more violence. Well, Lynda, as you mentioned at the start of this report, there has been an ominous sign in these military developments. The Ukrainian government again accusing Russia of deploying large groups of military personnel across the border from Russia to assist the pro-Russian rebels in the east. There's been no comment from the Kremlin about that, but in the past, the Russian authorities have consistently denied that any of their regular troops take part in the fighting inside eastern Ukraine. But this is interesting coming from the Russian Foreign Ministry, a deputy foreign minister saying that Ukraine should not essentially depend on a military solution. It may be the biggest strategic mistake that could lead to irreversible consequences for Ukraine's statehood. So something of a veiled threat there from the Russian Foreign Ministry.
It certainly is. So if not a military response, what does Russia want? What sort of solution are they calling for?
Well, it's a good question. What the Russians officially say they want is for the peace agreement that was brokered a few months ago to be set in force. They want the Ukrainians to withdraw their heavy equipment, their heavy weaponry from civilian areas to guarantee the safety of Russian-speaking civilians in the east of the country. I mean, on paper, this is what the Ukrainians want as well, but it's in the detail that the two sides have been unable to to find a way of making that truce agreement, the so-called Minsk agreement, because it was agreed in the Belarusian capital, Minsk, from actually working on the ground. And the fight over the airport is a good example of that. The Ukrainian military, the government military, are saying that it's within their rights that they should occupy that airport. The rebels rejecting that, saying that the military lines give them that airport. And so there's a lot of disputes on the ground that are preventing the two sides forging that truce and to implement the truce.
Yeah, neither side wants to compromise. Matthew Chance, thank you very much for that update.